Hello and welcome back to the channel. You're watching Rocket Coffin Studios. Usually I would be putting up an Average Man Reviews video, but we're going to do something a little different. So, you guys have been after me in the comments for quite some time to start doing prop making and tutorial videos. Well, that time has finally come. I'm going to show you how I painted this. I'll show you the entire process from start to finish, how you could do it yourself, and hopefully get you to see that you really don't need fancy paints or fancy equipment. I didn't use an airbrush. I didn't use like really expensive paints. I used simple acrylic paints you can get from Walmart and a regular brush. If you hadn't noticed by my voice, I am quite sick. So this video, it's going to be what it's going to be. You know, it's my first tutorial video. I've tried to do them in the past. I was never happy with how they came out. Kind of a case of you don't go when you're ready, you go when you're ready enough. I wanted to get this done. I wanted to get it started because we can only go up from here, right? So please let me know in the comments what you think of the video. But anyway, without further ado, and without adoing any further, let's get into it. So here is the base blaster with nothing done to it. And you've already seen it, but let's look at it again with a nice little glamour shot here. This is the finished product. I didn't change anything structurally aside from adding that stock extension. Now the stock extension is super simple. It's just two PVC pipes rammed into a piece of thick foam and then some thin foam wrapped around it to look like cloth straps. Now I'm using Plasti-Dip. Plasti-Dip works really well on, you guessed it, plastic items. So I tend to Plasti-Dip any blasters and things like that I'm painting, because before I would sand them and it takes forever to hand sand them. So the Plasti-Dip saves you a little bit of time, and then I go over top of it with a primer spray paint. You don't have to do this. You can just use brush paints directly onto Plasti-Dip, but it takes a lot longer to cover. So it is in your best interest to put a primer on it, but you don't have to. Getting into brush painting, we are using Apple Barrel acrylics. There might be some other brands, but I think Apple Barrel and Americana are like the two that I use the most. And I'm using a big brush because all we're doing is making the wood sections brown. Just a whole lot of brown. And we're going to go in with 3 or 4 different colors for our wood grain. Our first color will be this orange apricot. This kind of gives us the highlights that are going to shine through a little bit. And we're still using the big brush. I'm sort of dry brushing it on the edges and anywhere like that to just make it a little more three-dimensional and give it that effect, that three-dimensional effect. That was a horrible way to describe it, but we're here now. So next up we have light mocha. This is I was going to say this is a light brown, like duh, it's light mocha. That's by definition what it is. But doing the same thing, dry brushing it, we're just trying to add those differences in color on the wood grain. Now we have coffee latte? I don't know. We have some kind of brown. If you really want to know the exact colors, I guess you could pause the video and look at them. But you just need some different variations of brown and tan and orange to really make wood grain in the style that I do. And bear in mind, the way that I do it is not the be-all, end-all, most perfect way to do wood grain. It's just, this is the way that I've found, this is the way that works for me, you are obviously welcome to do it differently. I use this, I call it a broom brush. I'm not an artist. I don't know the proper names of things. I just slap paint onto stuff. But I use my broom brush with a darker brown, and this gives us some really good striations and differences in color in the wood grain. I like using the broom brush because the way that the bristles are spread out, it kind of gives that wood grain effect. And that's really, you'll notice I'm not moving the brush in circles or up and down. I'm really trying to move it in one uniform direction to make sure everything looks right. Now, I bet you didn't see this coming. We're going to use a magic marker now. And this is very tedious, but it gives a pretty cool effect. I'm just making little lines. Just a bunch of little lines all the way across everything. Not fully straight. You want them to be a little bit curved. And just kind of making a bunch of V shapes in a sense. So this will really help kind of guide the darker brown that we're going to do next and give it kind of a spot to sit. Because I'm going to take a darker brown and kind of connect some of these lines to give that difference that you usually see in like a piece of wood. This is the dark brown that we're using, and I'm going to do it with a small brush, and I just sort of connect whatever looks like it should connect. Now, what I'm going to do next is water down the brown paint, and then I was trying to think of the correct verb to use there. I'm going to paint it again with this same color brown, but it's going to be watered down so it will sort of tint the entire wooden section. And these areas that we're doing now will show up as being much darker. So it will be our final sort of thing to make the wood grain look really cool. Because right now it looks a little bit like a weird giraffe pattern, right? So now we take our watered down brown. That's just a fun thing to say. Watered down brown. We take our watered down brown and we slather it all over everything. And the other colors will show through this because it's not a full, like, covering coat of paint. It's sort of, what's the term? Transparent? Translucent? I don't know. But it gives a pretty cool effect, and it looks... You have to understand, with doing cosplay and costume blasters, now we're just going to use a little sort of silver color for all the metal. But for doing cosplay and costume blasters, what looks really good in person doesn't always look so good on camera. So some things like wood grain, you kind of have to overdo where it borders on almost a cartoonish effect. Because when you're on camera, now granted, movies and films and stuff like that, their props are a little bit different, but they also have a much, much stronger camera. When you're at a convention and people are taking photos of your stuff with, you know, an iPhone from 10 feet away, it doesn't always show up so good. So when you overdo your effects, they show up a little bit better. Now we're going to do gold for the trigger and the hammer. And I'm using the same little brush that we did earlier for the dark brown wood grain lines. We just do a little gold on the hammer and the trigger. I promise next time I will get better camera angles so my hand is not in the way of the shot. Now I take some black, and with the black we are pretty much going to go and outline all of the silver sections. This will again add to that three-dimensional effect, make everything sort of pop, and give it a little more contrast. And also, as you see, I can cover up where the silver bled over onto the wood grain, because I am not going to go back and touch up those wood grain spots with like 5 different colors again. That's a big part of painting, is figuring out your workflow and how to kind of undo whatever you've screwed up. I mean, obviously the best method is to just not be sloppy when you paint, but you're going to get paint on parts that have already been painted. It's best if you can just wipe it off, but sometimes that's not an option. Sometimes you wipe it off and it smears and makes it even worse. So that's why you see me doing the black now, as opposed to doing a black wash first and then painting all these different sections. So now we are going to do a black wash. Super simple process. You water down the paint, you slather it on, and then you wipe it away with a towel. What happens is the paint will sort of nestle into all the cracks and crevices, and when you wipe it away, you're not going to be able to wipe all of it off. So it sort of tints the silver, gives it a little more of a used, beat up, worn look. Because if I hadn't mentioned it, what I'm doing is the Caravan shotgun from Fallout New Vegas. This is another little trick. I am not that good of a painter, so I usually overdo my weathering and stuff like that and add a bunch of details to distract you from my more mediocre paint jobs. If this was a perfect factory finish kind of paint job, it probably wouldn't look as good because, like I said, I'm not that good of a painter. I just know how to razzle you with stuff. Also, here's my cat. His name is TJ. It stands for Thomas Jefferson, and I am not joking. We adopted him, and that was the name that he had, and that's the name that he has kept. He is very large. I have never seen a orange cat that wasn't a direct Garfield copy. So anyway, back to the blaster. We're going to take our brown burnt umber, and we're going to start what will become rust. I do rust very simple. I get some splotchy brown sections at various points, and then I go back in with some orange and I highlight those brown sections. But there's not really any rhyme or reason as to where I put the rust at. I just kind of go, wherever feels right. So we go through all of our silver spots and we add a little bit of brown to it. Now we have a pure orange. God, my voice is terrible. I'm sorry that you are having to endure this, but I'm doing the best I can. So now, like I said, we go back to all of our brown sections and we just give them a little orange highlight. The trick here is not to cover the brown entirely, but to do orange in certain spots of it and actually to go past the brown in some other spots. This gives it a sort of messy, more realistic look, I think. I mean, I might be, full of shit, you never know, but I think it looks good. And again, there are a bajillion ways to paint and a bajillion different ways that you could do this. This is just the method that I use. Now we have all of our metal coated with rust. Now we need to make our metal look a little more beat up. So we're going with a brighter silver color, and I'm using this really screwed up brush. The bristles are all stuck together, which is great because it gives a very erratic sort of pattern when you paint with it. So I dab it into the paint, and then I just kind of slap it all over the place. Go all different directions. This will kind of give it the effect of like really beat up, scratched metal. And it makes it so that when you look at it from different angles, it'll kind of highlight and, show you something so it looks better from different angles. I'm struggling here. If you hadn't noticed, I don't write scripts. I just sort of talk, which some people probably don't like, but those are people whose opinions I don't value. So anyway, it is at this point in the painting process that I remembered as I was painting the hammer that I have not done anything on the inside of the gun. So I just give it a crap ton of silver to hide the fact that I haven't done anything in there, because it's probably not going to be open most of the time, but just in case, we want to give it a little bit of paint on the inside. So now, with most of the body done, we're going to move on to the fabric. I'm using some Plaid FX paint. These are really good paints. They're a little harder to get now, but they're made for being used on foam. So we're going to use that red as our base. Now, originally, I was going to do this part silver, because in the game, it is silver. It's, I believe it's duct tape that's holding it together in the game. I was kind of afraid that would be too much silver, so we went with red because, well, the straps were already red from the red primer, and I thought it looked okay. I go back and I do a second coat of red because the first was just a little too splotchy for my taste. Ah, you didn't think the marker was coming back, did you? What we're going to do with the marker is sort of like a cell shading style effect. I'm going to hit all the edges and all the in-between spots and outline it so there's a little more distinction between the straps, and add some in the middle of each of the straps to sort of suggest like folds in the fabric or wrinkles or whatever. And then we'll go in with a different shade of red in just a moment. And similar to how we did the wood grain, I'm going to do the red in between these spots of black to kind of, again, give it that three-dimensional effect. And just like the wood grain, we are using the small brush. Like I said, I'm not using anything fancy here. I'm using like 3 different brushes and a handful of colors. We go through all of the spots and add a little bit of red to them. And we're still adding red. And we add some more red. Just when you think we were done adding red, we add some more red. Alright, next up, we're going to take brown, or burnt umber, I'm just going to call it brown, with a small brush, and all the spots that are black, I am going to cover in brown. That way it doesn't look so cartoonishly black. It makes it a little more subdued. This is just one of those simple effects, but it does, I think, add to the finished product. I don't really have anything to say at this point because, you know, we're just making it brown. But, yeah, that's it. That's what it takes to get the paint job to look like that. Our final thing is to take it outside and hit it with a coat of matte spray paint. We're going to fast forward through this because I think y'all know how spray paint works by now. And now, let's do a screen test, because it just so happens I have a Fallout New Vegas cosplay to use with the Fallout New Vegas prop. Let's see how it looks all together. I would say it looks pretty good. So that is it. Hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully it was at least entertaining. And if you guys like this, let me know and I will do more in the future. If you hated this, let me know anyway. And I'll still probably do more in the future. I do value your opinions, just so you know. All right. So thank you for sticking with me here to the end, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. You've already seen this footage, but I thought you might want to see it up close and personal one more time.